Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this breakout session entitled Marketing, or Mapping Market Needs, rather. My name is Kevin QUIRK. I am the current president of FIT, the World Federation of, the International Federation of Translators, which includes terminologists, interpreters, and translators. Could we just have a quick show of hands to get you active? How many people are exclusively translators? Hands up. Okay, that's 45%. How many people are, no, I don't know the percentages, I'm just making them up. How many people are also interpreters as well? Any terminologists here? Good. We need terminologists, we know that. We need the human terminologist as well, still do. Anybody a literary translator? Hey, good stuff. We will need you as well in the future. We are so certain about that. So I'm trying to narrow down how many people will be leaving us shortly. I must say I've heard a few things that have caused me some concern over the last 2 days. I am privileged and honored to be here. Nevertheless, it has been good. We have heard a lot of talk about the future of the translation industry. We've heard a lot of talk about machines. We've heard a lot of talk about neural networks. We've heard a lot of talk about, I was going to say hot-shot translation, but zero-shot translation. I know a couple of literary translators who at least need a couple of shots before they even start. But I would like to emphasize the human factor just for a moment or two before I introduce the speakers to you. Of course, as I said, I represent the International Federation of Translators, FIT. We have 129 associated or affiliated associations. We represent around 100,000 human translators through our member organizations who are highly professional organizations. We heard earlier today that quality matters, which is important. I'd like to just say that humans matter as well. And I do believe there will be a need for humans in the future as well. I certainly hope so. Let me give you a couple of facts. One indisputable, the other one made up, really. But the first one, I would contest and say that translators, and I'm including then terminologists and interpreters, are of above average intelligence. That's indisputable, I think. We all know of our own brilliance. Some people are more brilliant than others, of course, but we're above average, I would say. The second fact, which may be more disputable, is that, and I can see because I'm sitting on the other side watching these people here, watching everybody, that you are of above average beauty as well. Believe it or not. And before we get to a Harvey Weinstein moment, let me just say that I believe so. I believe this to be true, actually, and it helps me most days. Although, of course, there is the law of averages. I'm aware of that. So even though you think you may be more beautiful than everybody else, then, of course, not everybody can be as beautiful or the most beautiful person. So even if you are of above average beauty, you may be pulling the statistics down a little bit as well. So, but we are an essential part of the translation industry. We will continue to be an essential part of the translation industry, I believe. And I won't say any more now, but I will like to get on to the subject we're going to speak on, which is the mapping of market needs. I can say that the regional center for FIT in Europe, FIT Europe, has taken part in the European Language Industry Survey for quite some time. This time around, they have also provided some of the questions for the survey. I believe that Rudy will be speaking on this at some length, and I won't say much more, but we welcome the input made by our individual translators as well for this survey, and I'm looking forward to hearing some of the results of the survey as well. We will be speaking about how we will determine the current and future needs of the translation market based on the experiences of teachers and graduates and the results of surveys. And I'd like now to introduce the panel. The far right is Nataša, HIRCI, who is an associate professor at the University of Ljubljana in Slovenia. And on my immediate right is Špela VINTAR, full professor also at the University of Ljubljana in Slovenia. On my left is, one moment, Rudy TIRRY, who is the president of the European Union of Associations of Translation Companies, EUATC, and also the current president of the BQTA, the Belgian Association of Translation Companies. He has a lot of experience in the market and in the translation industry, and we'll be speaking about surveys in particular. And on my far right is Martin VRANG from the Directorate General for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion. Martin is team leader in the unit Skills and Qualifications. We will be taking questions and answers at the end, but each of the speakers will be willing to answer any questions you may have as we come to the end of this session. And we have to finish on time, I've been told as well. So please, without further ado, please, Nataša, if you could start.
Okay, hello everyone. Dobar dan, to greet you in Slovene as well, which is my mother tongue. And thank you very much, Kevin, for this introduction. And also, I'd like to thank the DGT for giving me a chance to actually talk about what could be perhaps considered a rather modest attempt of how to bring the academia and the industry together. And I want to focus on the work placement and perhaps what we refer to as the flagship event related to that. That's the Careers Day, as organized by the Department of Translation Studies in Ljubljana, in Slovenia. Well, as a member of the EMT network, we are quite strongly committed to actually having work placement as a compulsory part of our MA studies. And there are obviously a number of quite positive effects of such work placement, as it undoubtedly creates a partnership between the academia and what we could refer to as prospective employers from the translation service industry. And at the same time also enables the students to raise awareness of what could be referred to as their future labor market. Obviously, it also offers a rather great opportunity for the students. You have to understand, for some of the students, this is the very, very first time that they actually talk to someone from the business. This is the very first time that they try to establish some links, business links with what could be referred to as their prospective employers, giving them a chance to work with a professional work environment and have a hands-on experience in real-life translation assignments, as it is. At the same time, obviously, while they are taking their work placement, they end up developing their translation competencies and skills that are necessary to be able to successfully integrate later on into their labor market. And which I believe is also extremely important, they gain translation confidence, which is also quite necessary to be able to enter the market successfully. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about a compulsory unpaid traineeship, if you wish, which is part of our MA in Translation and Interpreting in year 1. And that lasts for 3 weeks and can be extended as an elective for additional 3 weeks. At the end of their work placement, the students have to produce a final report and then are also issued a certificate by the employers. I said unpaid work placement, fair enough, but I have to point out that over the years, as we've really tried to persuade the TSPs to collaborate with us, we ended up having the work placement a stage where the traveling and the meal expenses are covered. And sometimes the students are also offered some sort of a reward. Rest assured, this is by far means any significant amount of money we are talking about here. Far from it. But the students do see this as a token of appreciation and extremely appreciate that. Their work is being valued there as well. It's definitely a fantastic chance to work in a team of professional translators. We're talking about work placement in the company or in the organization that offers these work placements themselves, and work with the state-of-the-art translation technologies. They also have a chance to be supervised or overseen by someone who's usually an experienced or usually it's also a senior member of the staff who not only oversees what they do, but also assigns the tasks, gives advice, and overall assumes this rather encouraging role. This is the person that the students can turn to whenever needed. Who are the prospective employers? Well, we actually work really quite closely with the EU institutions, that's both the European Commission and the European Parliament. The students can take that work placement here. Or they can actually choose from a variety of TSPs or LSPs, if you wish, from either public or private sector. What I have in mind here is that actually we're talking about various government offices or the national radio and TV broadcaster. They can do their traineeship with the Slovene press agency. They can do it with some sworn court interpreters or translators. Perhaps even work where they can do their work placement, for instance, with Renault's subsidiary in Slovenia that also has its own department of translation and so on. In addition to all these, obviously, the obvious choice are various translation companies, localization companies and agencies, also those that take care of the audiovisual and translation and interpreting. So how do we do this? We have sessions together with the students. These are group sessions where we talk about the logistics and how to apply and so on and so forth. And some individual consultations are also offered to the students where we try to help them out if they're in two minds about it, where to go and how to go about this work placement. And sometimes I coordinate these sessions, and sometimes, I try to encourage the students to perhaps go out of their comfort zone and perhaps do something totally new, take the risks. This was one of the key words yesterday. So I think this is really quite a good idea. In addition to that, as I strongly believe in peer-to-peer education, I also try to organize what we refer to as the trainee-to-trainee sessions, where the senior members, their senior colleagues from MA2, year 2, come and talk to these younger colleagues and tell them about their own impressions and their own experiences with various TSPs. And then there is this, what I refer to as the Careers Day, where we actually give a chance for everyone to meet. So the academia partners with the industry members. So this is an annual networking event. We organize either in the winter or in the spring of the academic year. And this year it was actually organized together with DGT field office in Ljubljana, and that was part of the Translating Europe event. The first couple of sessions were actually organized at the venue of the Faculty of Arts, quite modestly, obviously. And then, we partnered with the Association of Translation Companies, and they offered a much nicer venue then at the Chamber of Commerce and Industry of Slovenia. And we also had a couple of these events organized together with the DGT field office in Ljubljana, and the last venue was really nice because this is actually the venue of the European Commission and the European Parliament called the Hiša Evropske unije, or the EU House in Ljubljana. So perhaps as pictures say more than words sometimes, perhaps I could quickly guide you through it. In addition to, well, we have a rather formal part and then less formal part where everyone gathers and the students get together with the members of the industry. But we sometimes invite various speakers who also talk about either employability. So we had the members of the EURES network talk about employability. We had the EU Careers Ambassador talk about EPSO, present the entire process, and so on and so forth. And then the very last event was organized as part of the Translating Europe initiative in Ljubljana in the spring. So in the morning there were workshops, and then in the afternoon we had this event held for our students and the alumni as well. It's organized jointly, the Faculty of Arts, or our department, and the DGT field office was heavily involved in this as well, for which we would really like to thank you. usually we have the opening address given by the dean of the faculty, you know, to have all this formal stuff go down as well, or the head of the Department of Translation Studies does that. And then there is a venue for all, well, the teaching staff as well as the trainee translators and the employers to meet. And this year, we actually did it a little bit differently. So we invited Anita Horstnik, who is the president of the Association of Translation Companies, talk about what at that time were really totally fresh results of the 2017 Language Industry Survey. So she focused on the expectations and the challenges that... she focused on the expectations and the challenges of especially, you know, what is relevant for the Slovene translation market. And she was talking about, she focused not only the translation competences and the skills that are necessary for the future translators, but also talked about employability and what is there for us, waiting for us in the future. And what was really nice to see was, you know, that one of the key words yesterday was hope. This is what we need to give to the students who are just about to enter the translation market. And she was talking about some moderate employment optimism for Slovenia. And what was perhaps highly appreciated was the fact that when we got to the expected growth graph for Slovenia, there was a smiley face next to it. So the future is bright, and I can assure you that really brought the smile on the faces of everyone in the room as well. The students have to be told, you know, that there are various challenges on the market, but they also have to be given some sort of hope that, you know, that they can do their work properly and that they can do it in a market which is thriving in certain aspects. And they won't be replaced either by the machines or anything else, but that they can still do their work, but have to be open-minded about it, have to be able to adapt, and so on and so forth. Okay, afterwards we had a brief debate where everyone was invited to actually discuss the necessary competencies and employability in Slovenia and what is there for us and their expectations. And that was the end of the formal part. Here are some of the questions there in Slovene, however. So I don't really want to go through that. But once we end the formal part of the meeting, we get to the less formal part where the students actually go and meet what I hope are some of their prospective employers in the future. And they do that face-to-face, and they can talk to them, and they can discuss whatever concerns they have, also related to the work placement. In addition to that, I don't know if you can see, I can't show you that, but nevertheless, there is a lady from the Europass office that comes over as well and, you know, offers individual sessions to the students, tailor-making their CVs and helping out with that. So they can use those CVs then and go and talk to perhaps what could be referred to as the future employers. And there's after that, there is an informal socializing event where some refreshments are offered and people really relax and then talk about talk between themselves and also with the employers, how they see this contribute to, you know, their more successful collaboration in the future. Why do we believe this is a good idea to have work placement as part of the regular a regular study program? Because we're given highly positive responses from all the parties involved. There is a growing awareness of the benefits that this brings to the students, but also the employers are there realizing that, you know, they might be actually working during this work placement with their future employees. So I assume that can only be a good thing, right? And this is also quite good for the students to face what their acquired translation skills are at the moment, translation competencies, and perhaps what else needs to be done. Obviously, it provides a great platform for the business networking and the chance to not only meet, but also evaluate, if you wish, each other, right? So I guess that could be considered quite excellent for employability too. And last but not least, I strongly believe that through successful collaboration between the academia and the industry, the students are also given a chance to gain the necessary translation confidence, which, after all, should be considered as invaluable, right? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nataša. You expressed hope and confidence. These are essential words for building the confidence, self-respect of new translators who haven't. Yesterday we spoke about ladders. These people haven't even seen a ladder or got on a ladder, even maybe haven't seen one. Hopefully they have a concept of a ladder at least. But without further ado, we'll have to move on. I'd just like to remind you that you can ask questions on Slido. So there's an opportunity there to prep your questions, to prepare those for later. And do keep them coming in as well. And keep tweeting as well, thanks. Please, next speaker.
Thanks very much, yes. So my name is Špela VINTAR. I also come from the University of Ljubljana, where I've been teaching translation technologies, localization, terminology management, and similar things for the past 20 years. I have a confession to make. I belong to the few people in this room who are heretics, in the sense that I believe that technologies, especially machine translation, will profoundly change our profession. Not just change, possibly jeopardize, possibly eliminate translation as a profession, which is the background for a project that I'm currently leading. And I'd like to present some of the preliminary results of this project, in particular a survey that we've done. And I think that for the past 2 days we've heard quite a lot of discussions regarding skills and competences and market needs and so on. So it was our aim to better define these needs and skills and competencies. Right, now the language industry survey that had only been briefly mentioned identifies the skills gap as one of the major challenges that the language industry is facing at the moment. And if you look at the job advertisements and the vacancies that are being announced on various portals, actually the colleagues from the Ukraine had a similar slide yesterday, as far as I can remember. You will see very few posts being announced for translators. So the translator is not a very sexy thing to be at the moment. But there are, on the other hand, other profiles, which some of them might sound familiar, such as localization project manager. We have an idea what this might be. But then there are other profiles, such as multilingual personalization expert, and so on, which might not sound that familiar. And I'm wondering whether our graduates at the moment would apply for a post such as this. So I believe that there is actually a range of new services and new needs that exist, not just in the language industry, because who says that linguists or translators have to work in the language industry, right? So we propose to define a new profile, that of a digital linguist. The project I'm currently leading is called DigiLing, and it stands for Trans-European E-Learning Hub for Digital Linguistics. So there is some rebranding going on, as you might have noticed. What is, in fact, digital linguistics? We see it as a new interdisciplinary field, providing knowledge and skills for intelligent access, processing, analysis, creation of language content. And we see it as a fusion between linguistics, computer science, and social science. The project itself is an Erasmus Plus strategic partnership. It started last year and will go on for another 2 years. We are 5 universities and a company in the consortium. The first aim of the project basically is to elaborate the profile. I mean, this new profile that we're proposing, right? The digital linguist. So what is it? What are the skills and competences needed for such a profile? And as I mentioned before, we've done this by performing a survey. Now you may say, oh, not another survey. I'm hoping that this survey is slightly different from the ones that you might already know. And within those, within this mapping of skills and needs, we try to arrive at a model curriculum. So I set the mapping of these skills to a curriculum. And secondly, we are designing a set of online courses which should cover the major topics and major skills, and I'll say a little bit about this later on. So first about the survey. Our aim was, the background was the belief that there is a number of language-related tasks going on, not just in the language industry, but elsewhere, in companies, in institutions, and so on. We live in the age of big data, and yet when it comes to language data, so when it comes to texts, very often a lot of the knowledge, a lot of the information contained in those texts is not easily accessible, especially for languages other than English. So this is one area where we believe that a digital linguist might become useful. And another area is something that I think Miguel mentioned yesterday. Clients don't actually need you to translate for them. They need you to help them communicate. So communication in the digital age takes on many different forms. The translators of today are not really well equipped for this. So I think there is a need for another profile. Right. So our survey basically focused on companies out of the language, outside of the language industry bubble, right? We weren't interested in LSPs and companies dealing primarily with language, but others. And we were in particular interested in the types of content that they are dealing with. So whether they're dealing with just documentation and emails, or are they also dealing with structured or unstructured language data? Is it textual? Is it speech? Is it multimedia? And so on. The second area of questions referred to what kinds of actions these companies are actually performing. So are they performing any kind of intelligent search or data categorization or text mining or sentiment analysis or consistency checks and so on? And then, of course, we wanted to know how much of this content is multilingual and how they achieve multilinguality, right? We had 88 respondents from 11 countries, and now I'll briefly present some of the results. So among our respondents were quite a number of companies from the technology sector, but then other sectors were also well represented. We had one respondent who was actually a translation agency, but all the rest came from other sectors. Sorry. The first set of questions referred to the needs of companies for sorting, analyzing, and categorizing different types of content. perhaps because I know that you can't really see those pie charts very well, you should perhaps focus on blue, blue meaning that there is need, or that these companies are actually already doing it, so they're doing the categorization or sorting or analysis and so on. And the purple piece of the cake indicates that they plan to do it in the future, all right? So we can see that for emails and and documents, be it legal documents, contracts, internal documents, and so on, the large majority of our respondents are already doing it or planning to do it. A bit less for support tickets and customer queries, probably related to the sector and the type of activities of the company. And again, a slightly lower portion of companies responded that they are analyzing or want to analyze their competitors' social media websites and so on. And the next set of questions, we wanted to know specifically what types of tasks they want to, or they are doing. So categorization by topic is something that a large majority of people or respondents are already doing. A bit less for intelligent search, intelligent text searching, by which we mean, for example, searching with synonyms or performing some pre-processing steps before the actual queries. Then for the consistency check of terminology or use of controlled language, it turned out that not so many respondents are actually using it, but quite a few are planning it. And the social media analysis, again, a bit less than half of our respondents are either doing it already or planning to do it. Now, if we look at the skills part, right? So in order to perform such tasks, what does it mean for a digital linguist? Are these very complex operations? Could a digital linguist easily perform a categorization of documents or an analysis of blog posts and stuff like that? Normally, these are, in terms of language processing, considered low-level tasks, right? They would very probably involve some sort of linguistic pre-processing, possibly lemmatization, some normalization, and then some keyword extraction, or extracting other relevant bits of information. So thinking about I don't know, young graduates or young students. This is not, if we are now teaching people to extract terminology from text, or if we're teaching them to build corpora, this is not such a sophisticated task, okay? But then we go a bit further. So this set of questions referred to perhaps more sophisticated technologies that companies might be needing. And as you can see here, the need was significantly lower. So, for example, for automatic relevant responses to emails and other communication, you would need to design a proper text generation system, very probably, which is a slightly more sophisticated technology, and not many people were using it. The same goes for chatbots, and even less for automated speech or dialogue communications with clients, or for animated digital agents, in the sense of avatars communicating with customers. Now, here it might seem that there is really very little need for such solutions. On the other hand, of course, it may also mean that need would exist if the companies, or if our respondents had the personnel or the staff to provide such services, right? Okay. Then we asked how many of these tasks should be or are performed multilingually. As you can see, the majority. so these were the respondents who first replied, yes, we are using it or we want to use it. And then we asked them, do you need it multilingual or monolingual? So mostly they need multilingual tasks. And then we also asked, okay, so with the multilinguality need, how do you achieve it? Do you use translation? Do you use digital tools? And how many languages do you regularly translate or transcreate into? As you can see, translation is already used by over half of the people, of the respondents, and a number are also planning to. The majority use some digital tools, and the numbers of languages varied. Basically, we had one respondent who regularly translate into over 70, but the majority use 5 or less languages. And lastly, I mean, these are not all the questions, but lastly, we wanted to know what about multilingual content authoring? Do you actually employ people for this? It turns out, yes, of course, this is quite a widespread linguistic task that needs to be performed. So either for web content authoring or for copywriting, the majority of our respondents either employ in-house people or outsource those tasks. This was just a brief summary of the results. If you want to learn more about the survey, then please refer to our website, the website of the project. Under deliverables, you will find a detailed report. But in any case, we see these results basically as a confirmation of our assumption that there is need for linguistic tasks other than translation or transcreation. And we believe that this is an interesting profile, not just in terms of the need, but also in terms of the rates of the pay, right, of remuneration, because the lady from SDL earlier on said, well, the academia should train people to become post editors. But frankly, do post editors need a master's degree? And how much do you pay post editors, right? I would rather say that we need to equip people with the skills that will last them a bit longer, and with skills that are a bit more sophisticated than post editing. So this is what we have basically tried to draw out of the results. I know that you cannot read this, absolutely, I can't either, but it's an attempt to list, first of all, some of the tasks that we encountered, okay, such as content categorization, intelligent search, digital content authoring, sentiment analysis, localization, text analytics, and so on. So these are the tasks that you see, they exist, okay, in the world. And then we tried to map those tasks, or we tried to connect them to the skills that people, that digital linguists are supposed to have in order to perform them. Now, of course, for several of the tasks, you need multiple skills. Things are not that simple. But as you can see, one of the skills is also use machine learning to cluster data or to classify data, or develop your own solution using programming. Do I think that a digital linguist needs to have programming skills? Yes. Yes, absolutely. And then there are other things like perform linguistic pre-processing, transcreate content, localize content, and so on. So those are different kinds of skills, but in any case, for many of these tasks, tools are readily available. We heard quite a bit about neural machine translation earlier on, but the algorithms for neural machine translation are freely available. Anyone can play with them, okay? So this doesn't mean that we have to develop proper IT specialists with the programming skills equaling the graduates of a computer science faculty. It just means that people or digital linguists of the future should be equipped with the capacity to design new solutions, okay? To design new solutions to the problems that might, or to the needs that will emerge in the future. And my last slide is this, which might remind you of the EMT circle of translation competences. This is an attempt to perhaps, in a slightly more user-friendly manner than the previous slide, to map the skills that I think will be needed in the future. So there are the text production skills, the data management skills, which subsume also the skills to process textual data, to do language processing. Then the digital media competence, to be very, very fluent in the different genres and in the different varieties and communicative settings of digital communication. And a very important aspect, the ethical and legal aspect. So if we are dealing with data, and datafication was another buzzword mentioned today, people need to have a very, very clear idea how this data is to be protected, used, reused, managed, archived, both from the ethical perspective. If I am to become a personalization expert, okay, what kinds of data may I use or share or publish? And on the other hand, if I'm training an MT engine, where can I take my data? Can I simply grab everything I can get and then put it somewhere else? So these issues. And that's all. I'll be happy to answer some questions needed.
Thank you very much, Špela. Somebody has to be the heretic. I hope there aren't too many more, but thank you. We do need to move on, but keep your questions coming in, comments. Should we be rebranded as digital linguists? Not all of us, maybe, but is there a need to do so? Give us your views and your questions as well, please. Rudy, TIRRY, please go ahead. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. First, before I start, a question to you. Who has already seen results of the language survey? Not many. Results? Yes. Not many. Okay. That gives me a lot of freedom, of course. First of all, thank you for the opportunity. Let me tell you that this is not the first time that this survey is taking place. The first edition of it was in 2013. So why is that important? Because is the remote, so that I can advance. Why is that important? Because this is not a survey about facts that takes a snapshot and then it's there and for the future to see it. It's a survey about perceptions, expectations, concerns, very human data. We're not asking people what's your exact turnover, what's your profit, how many people are do you exactly have in your company, and things like that. It's more about what do you expect, how do you expect the market to evolve? Are you successful? How successful do you feel you are? Do you expect to be more successful, less successful next year, and things like that? Obviously, when you ask questions like that, there's a lot of subjectivity in the answers, so you need to involve a number of control mechanisms, develop a number of control mechanisms in the survey to cross-check these results. Now, since this is the fifth time now that we're doing it, we've seen a gradual increase in the number of respondents, and thanks to Fit's role in this latest one, actually, suddenly the number of respondents exploded. It doubled, actually. But it also shifted the mix of respondents, because from originally being focused on translation companies, obviously now majority, as you've seen on the slide, the majority of respondents were in 2017 were freelance translators, which changed the type of, considerably changed the type of responses, of replies. Let me go into a few of the conclusions. I'm not going to go over the whole survey, which had something like 30 questions, but a few major ones, and especially a few surprising ones, at least surprising to us. And the first one is not surprising, because my co-panelist already revealed it to you. One major conclusion this year was one of optimism. So let's call it hope again. I immediately have to make a caveat here, because there's an error on a rather big error on the slide. The surface that you see is shifted upward. It should start at the bottom with 30%. So don't pay too much attention. If you read the report on one of the websites where it is published, you'll see the real data. But let's focus on the graphs itself, on the expectations, and you see clearly that it's going upward. Now, is this a temporary situation or not? We don't know. You see it going up and down. One year after next, and what we could analyze is that especially companies, they react to the real data of the year before. They don't look very far ahead. They correct their expectations of last year based on this year's situation. How, if, for instance, in 2015, we had an almost unrealistic euphoria in the expectations. The people expected to double their turnover and things like that. That didn't happen, and immediately afterwards, in 2016, you saw a correction. It's just like on the stock exchange. You have a correction, and the values go down. Here, the expectations went down. Now, when you see this type of percentages, don't get too euphoric. These are not percentages of growth. These are the percentages of the respondents that expressed more hopeful expectations than pessimistic expectations. So when you see 50%, it means maybe that there were 60% of people that said, yeah, it's going to be more, and 10% that said it's going to be less. The difference between the two is 50. That's what it represents. Now, this is not the only question that we asked to determine this optimism. We asked the similar question about what they plan to do with employment, for instance, because that, in many cases, is a good indicator of their long-term optimism. As a company, you're not going to hire people if you think that this surge is just a temporary, one-year temporary phenomenon. And that went up as well. I don't have a graph here to illustrate it. And the third one, you mentioned the smiley. Here they are again, but for the whole of Europe. This was based on another question where we asked companies whether they were expecting to expand in their own national market or internationally, or on the other hand, whether they were planning to sell their company. So owners who were planning to sell, and they had two choices: either sell and stay involved, which is still a sign of, okay, I'm disengaging a little bit, but I want to stay involved. And then really the bad thing was, okay, I want to get out. I want to sell and get out. Actually what you're seeing here, those percentages are again the difference between those companies, because those were mainly companies who answered that question, those companies who wanted to expand, which was the positive part, and those who wanted to sell, get out, which was the negative part. And you're seeing that majority is green, which is a good situation. It confirmed the other answers for the other questions. There's only one red spot at this moment, which is Austria. Who's from Austria here? Quite a few ones. So I would urge you to try and understand where this comes from. I also asked it to people from the Austrian Association of Translation Companies to try and study that, why it is this way. Because this is not the first time that it happens. Actually, 2 years ago, they were green. Austria was green. 1 year ago, it was yellow. And this year it's red. So there's something happening in Austria that we don't understand really. But for the other ones, it's sometimes up and down. Belgium is very flat usually. We're very moderate people here. But not very high hopes, not very big despair. France has jumped up because it was low last year. It was not very hopeful last year. It has jumped up this year again. UK has been up always up to now. This is interesting because it gives us, especially the combination of those different questions, it gives us a good basis for the sentiment of the market and the evolution of that sentiment. And that's what this survey is all about. Next main topic, but it will come back afterwards. Yeah, we've heard a lot about machine translation. This is the result of how it is actually used. And so this slide shows you the level of penetration of machine translation today. Well, in January 2017. May have grown in the meantime. What you do see on the slide is that there's quite a clear correlation between the use of machine translation and the size of the company or the translation operation, I would say. Whether it's an individual translator or a translation department or a company. The biggest use is going to be in the biggest outfits. And that is very logical because it's those biggest outfits that will be able to handle the big volumes. And we've heard yesterday, we've heard today as well. It is about volume, it is about data, and this type of, I would call them routine translations. That is where these technologies are mostly used. Interesting enough as well is that you see those yellow and blue dots. The yellow ones are where people say, yeah, we use MT, but we don't use it ourselves. We get the MT from our clients, and we do the post-editing. The blue ones are where they operate the MT engine themselves. And that's a big difference. And because you see a lot of big yellow dots, even in the lower size categories for individual translators who are going to receive MT pre-translated output from agencies, for instance, who are operating the MT engine themselves, but have much less MT engine experience themselves, which is one of the recommendations that I would give to individual translators. Don't be the victim of MT, take control of MT. You have the possibility. There are engines out there that you can use yourself. There are even companies there that will do the preparation, do the creation of an MT engine for you, for your specific clients. They're not going to do it for free, that's obvious, but it's a business. So take the initiative yourself. I'm curious to see how this involvement of MT is going to be next year. For your information, since a few of you have been really aware of the survey, the new survey will come out again end of January, I guess. Yeah, end of January. We normally have 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks for people to fill it in, and the results are published in March. So January 2018, watch out for it and participate, I would say. Oops, that's one too far. Okay. Since also the EMT network is part of the organizers of the survey, we have a number of questions also about recruitment, about training and things like that. Recruitment didn't give too many surprising results. These questions, you would expect this type of pattern to appear. For the language, we asked the same question about language positions and about language-related positions, which is different in our industry. We have clear language positions like a translator, like an editor, a reviewer, and so on, post-editor. And we have people like project managers who are very close to the translation process, but who are not really always really involved in the translation themselves. And clearly the expectations are different. As you can expect for the language positions, the language-specific skills, mother tongue, target language, translation competence, if you add up the critical and the important, you would end up close to 100%. For the other ones, it's far less. And inversely, for what we call the soft skills, which we talked about yesterday a lot, yesterday morning, those, strangely enough, are not really considered very critical in those language positions, which in my opinion is kind of shame. It's not because someone is hired as a translator that he or she should not be a good communicator, should not be a good team player and things like that. On the other hand, you do see that they are valued really critical and important for the jobs as project manager and the like. This was not really surprising. What was surprising was the big difference between the two. We expected the trend but not to be so clear. Let me go first to the next one because that's more related. About training. We asked about how people are investing in training, how organizations are investing in training. We see that this is pervasive everywhere. Training, there is somewhere between 2 and 5% usually of budget that goes into training. A lot less, strangely enough, in translation departments, where they stated that training investments are almost inexistent. This is the first year that we asked this question. So we need to verify next year how this is possible because it's so counterintuitive. You would expect that in a translation department that there is investment in training. Actually, according to the answers, no. Something even more striking, which confirms that, is that when we asked what the financial return on those training investment was, companies and independent professionals, so the freelancers, answered, yeah, there is a return. We feel a return, sometimes more, sometimes less, but we feel a return. The translation departments often said that they didn't see any return at all. So again, this is clearly something that we need to look into. one other thing there is that what was very surprising for us is that Denmark, although considered as a very high standard country in training, in translation, and so on, stood out in that question with too many answers that there was no real return on training, and that was very surprising for us as well, especially because the vast majority of the answers in Denmark came from freelance translators, which on average state that there is quite a good return. And now let's go back to this slide. Which is about the industry trends. This is a very difficult one to do in this survey because it is an open question. So we don't ask people to select in a list. We ask them to give their open opinion about what they think is going to happen and what the prevailing trends are. We've seen gradually over the last 3 years, we've seen MT move up on the ladder, a different ladder, very fast. Last year it was still on the same level as price pressure. But this year clearly it took the lead position. Price pressure still second. After that it becomes blurry. People do not clearly have a good idea of what they have to expect. When you see in the graph, you see that as many people, I have to look at it myself again, as many people expect higher quality as they expect lower quality. Which means probably that they're coming from different angles, different positions. The MT has something to do with it. It's the last slide actually. I want to make one remark about that MT and the link with that quality is that yesterday there was a poll asking the audience whether they saw MT as positive or negative, and 75% I think was the final score positive. Now this survey gives the opposite result. Because we also ask whether it's a positive or negative trend. And for MT, it's about 30 positive, 60 negative, and 10 undecided. So I'm curious to see how that is going to evolve next year, because if you are representative for the whole audience, then we should be seeing an increase in positive signs, but I'm doubtful of that. I think that's about the end. Yep. And I invite you to look at the complete report wherever you can find it.
Thank you very much. We are very pressed for time. I like the fact that you did reiterate the issue of hope, positive sentiment, which is good, and also to take control of MT. Thank you. Straight ahead to Martin, who has really probably the final word. I don't think we'll have time for questions. We do need to end at 12:30 sharp, so you use your time wisely. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I will do my best to be brief with the presentation. So thank you very much also for the occasion to present here the ESCO project. ESCO stands for European Skills, Competences, Qualifications and Occupations. And it's actually not only about skills and translation, skills and competences for translation and for all other economic sectors, but it's also a lot about how to translate skills and competences. So the ambition of this project is to create a common language that is shared between the worlds of employment and the worlds of education and training. Because there we see that communication is sometimes difficult. The terminology, the way of how we speak about knowledge, skills and competences are different. And it's crucial that the education and training sector understands what the market needs and that the labor market understands what to expect from people that accomplished a certain education or training. And then we have another big communication challenge, of course, in Europe. And that is in the moment where someone wants to move from one country to another to find a job there, comes with a qualification from another country, wants to get assistance by the employment service of this country. We also need a common language. So that is what ESCO is about. It is about building a controlled vocabulary. So it would fit very nicely into this idea of digital linguistics. It's actually exactly what it is about, because the use of ESCO is in digital tools. It's made for digital tools. So this is what we are aiming for. One common language, one European language that is one reference point when communicating across borders about skills, competences, occupations, when looking for a job or when talking about training. So we created a classification that consists of 3 pillars. The first of these 3 pillars covers occupations, roughly 3,000 different occupations. And for each of these occupations, I picked here the example of a translator, it comes with a description, so it explains what this occupation is about. This description is in English only, but the rest of the terminology comes in 26 languages, and it also includes always non-preferred terms, so this can be synonyms, abbreviations, spelling variants, terms that the labor market uses to refer to an occupation. And for each of the occupations, it also comes with a list of knowledge, skills, and competences that are typically applied in this occupation. So here again, the knowledge, skills, and competences are available in all official languages of the EU, in Norwegian and in Icelandic. So 26 languages in total. And we have 3,000 occupations, each one with these lists of knowledge, skills, and competences, and with the descriptions. From the translation industry sector, we had, like with all the other parts of the classification, we had a strong support and help by stakeholders. Here in particular, the language industry expert group that helped us with these occupational profiles: translator, interpreter, sign language interpreter, so you can see the list here. But we had similar support also from all the other economic sectors, because in the end ESCO is covering the entire economy. So we really had experts from agriculture, from hospitality, from media, from manufacturing of textile, all sectors. We brought together the experts to get their input in order to develop these occupational profiles. And then we also have 13,500 knowledge, skills, and competences. And just like with the occupations, thanks to our colleagues from DG Translation, they are available in 26 languages. And all of them also have a short description. So it's a quite big vocabulary and repository of information. And there is also a third pillar, which is covering qualifications. It's a bit of a different nature, because this is actually not controlled vocabulary. It's actually bringing together information from databases of primarily the member states in the moment. In the moment, we have 2,400 qualifications in there, because so far we have 2 countries that are connected, that is Latvia and Greece. But many other member states will follow in the next months. And here is an example of an information on a translation, on a qualification from Latvia in the field of translation. And also here, there is structured information that is available in a multilingual way, including all the learning outcomes. So why do we do this? Obviously, there are several use cases for ESCO, so it's a bit like a Swiss Army knife. You can use it for many different purposes. The difference is that it is a digital Swiss Army knife, so we develop it in a way that it can be easily integrated into software. It comes with an API, an application programming interface. It's published as linked open data, and this makes it easy for service providers to integrate it into their own systems. One of the main use cases for ESCO is matching people with jobs, and especially in a cross-border context. So how can we find the right candidate for a job opening, or the right job for a person, if the information is encoded in different languages? We have there a cooperation of the European employment services. So in all member states, the European Employment Services form together a network, the EURES network. And as part of this network, we will use the European classification to exchange data between the employment services. And this then ensures that if a person wants to find from Estonia, goes to the Public Employment Service office in Estonia and wants to find a job in France, that the information between the French Employment Service and the Estonian Employment Service can be exchanged, and the Estonian advisor can present job offers to the person in Estonia. Then another important aspect is to build the career profile of a person, so how to record the skills, how to manage your skills, how to manage your learning process. So everything that has to do with building a CV, for example. So Europass is one example that can use terminology of ESCO. We also had a pilot project with LinkedIn to explore how LinkedIn could maybe make use of this as well. And here I should also say that it's an open source, so the data is open and is free to use for any public or private operator. But linked to this is then also the question, how can we help people to find learning opportunities that might be interesting to them, especially also when they want to move to another country, so they have to bridge the language gap in the search process. And this is where the software can help. Then another important challenge is how to make the qualifications transparent. This is obviously something in a recruitment process that is difficult. If a recruiter in a company gets a qualification from another member state and the diploma is written in a language that they don't understand, we want to make this more transparent so that for the recruiter it's easy to understand, yes, it's at this level, it's comparable to this type of institution in my own country, and this is the type of knowledge, skills and competences that people learn in this. So we want to make this information multilingual, but also bring it directly to the recruiter. So the important thing is that it's embedded in the systems that they normally use. Then a last important use case that I would like to mention is big data analysis of information in the labor market in general. So every type of forecasting, skills analysis needs the terminology. But when it comes to big data, it's about classifying a large number of documents, identifying for which occupations are the job posts, for example, what are the knowledge, skills and competences requested in there. And this, of course, can help us to understand much better where are the real skills gaps in the labor market, are there new trends, new patterns evolving, and to better understand the skills supply and demand on the labor market. So this was a quick overview of the ESCO project, and if you would like to, since we won't have a lot of time for questions, you can always send us questions by email or maybe during the lunch break later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Martin VRANG. We have now gone from hearing about in-house work placements to a rebranding of translators to digital linguists, to survey results, and on to the ESCO initiative. We unfortunately we have run out of time for questions. We can have one question apparently. One question. This gentleman.
Yes, thank you very much. I have several questions to Nataša, but I will try to be short. So it's about internship, as I happen to be involved in popularizing internship in Ukraine, so I'm very interested. Do you have any internship standards or even a kind of internship curriculum? And do you have any requirements to organizations who invite internships, and how do you select those who invite interns? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you for the question. Well, questions. I'm sure I can give you a longer overview of that over the lunch break, if you wish. But yes, we do have, as I mentioned before, we have joint meetings with the students where we discussed a variety of things related to the work placement, and we help them out, you know, trying to apply, how to go through the entire process. There's a lot of paperwork involved at the faculty level, I'm sorry to say, but that's always the case, yeah. unfortunate as it might be, this is an unpaid traineeship. However, you have to see my position here as well. I strongly, strongly encourage all the LSPs to pay for this work. Nobody's saying that they shouldn't. So if they're willing to do so, I only applaud to that. And there is a growing awareness amongst the LSPs now to at least try to compensate a little bit the effort, shown on part of the students in that. We don't have a selection process per se, because it's the LSPs who select the students rather than the other way around. Okay, and it's the students who decide where they wish to do their internship, so they decide their own employer. It works that way rather than the other way around, where they will be told where they have to go and do their internship. These people are grown-ups, so you have to give them some freedom to choose their own employer. On the other hand, the employers also have a chance to, invite the prospective applicants and talk to them, have an interview with them, and also judge the possible candidates on the basis of the CVs that are sent in. Sometimes I have to do the test translation. So we go through the entire process as though they're actually becoming an employee at this particular company. We really try to mock the real life situation here. But I guess more on that later on. Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. We do have to wrap up now. Thank you to the panelists. They will be available, they will be visible, I'm sure, during the break afterwards, after the wrap-up session. Do catch hold of them if you wish to confront them with anything they may have said, question them, enter into a dialogue. Thank you very much.